Hello, my name is Hunter Reprogle, and today we are going to talk about the origins of the WWII Jeep. Today, the Jeep is one of the most well-known and easily recognized vehicles in the United States. But how did that American icon originate, and how did it become so popular? Well, the story of the Jeep traces its roots all the way back to the First World War, when vehicles were first used by the military to transport troops and supplies to and from the front lines. Following the First World War, but before the Second World War, the military began working on a vehicle that would be lightweight and able to carry a small number of troops to and from the front lines to relay information and messages. And with that, the idea of the Jeep was born. But it would take multiple years and many prototypes before the Jeep became the icon that it is today. And that process started in 1940 when the U.S. military put out contracts for companies to begin producing prototypes. And those prototypes had to follow certain specifications, which included the vehicle should not weigh more than 1,275 pounds, it should be able to carry at least 3 soldiers and 600 pounds, it should have a 4x4 transfer case and transmission that can take it as low as 3 miles an hour cross country and 55 miles an hour on the highway. And beyond that, it should be able to mount a 30 cal machine gun and should be at least 6 1/4 inches off the ground. Initially, 2 companies were interested in producing designs for this vehicle. Those 2 companies were known as Willys Overland out of Toledo, Ohio, and the Bantam Motor Car Company. Of those 2, only one company committed to actually create a vehicle within the extremely short 49-day period that the Army provided, and that company was Bantam. Bantam's original design was known as the Pilot. However, because of the weight requirements put on by the military, the Bantam prototype had an extremely weak 20 horsepower engine. Because of this, the Army increased the weight specifications and released Bantam's original Pilot model to other car companies so that they could create their own prototypes. The 3 companies that were interested in producing prototypes were Bantam, Willys Overland, and Ford. Bantam's newest design was known as the BRC-60, and after some minor testing and upgrades, they developed the BRC-40. Now, the BRC-40 featured a much more simple design than their original Pilot model, with more square parts that were simpler to mass produce. In addition, the BRC-40 had a 45 horsepower engine that was much more powerful than the original 20 horsepower model. However, the extra horsepower came at a cost of the added weight, causing it to be 2,100 pounds. Ford was the next competitor, with their original design being known as the Pygmy, and after some minor testing and modifications, it became known as the GP, with G standing for government and P being a designation for the 80-inch wheelbase. Their design featured a 45 horsepower engine with a 4x4 transfer case and 3-speed transmission, much like the BRC before it. However, the Ford design was the first of the 3 companies to implement many of the features that we commonly associate with the Jeep today, such as the headlights recessed behind the grille, the squared-off front end, and the flat fenders. Willys was the final competitor in the trials, and they submitted their original design known as the Quad. Now, much like the other 2 competitors, their design went through some minor upgrades before being renamed the MA, with M standing for military and A standing for the versed prototype design that they created. The MA featured a more powerful 60 horsepower engine and a 4x4 transfer case with 3-speed transmission, much like the other 2. Now, the Willys MA design had very similar features to the original BRC, with more rounded curves and features that were less simple to produce. However, the military preferred the 60 horsepower engine in the Willys design over the 45 horsepower engines of the others. For these reasons, the military gave Willys the contract, but asked them to make a few minor changes to their design to make it more easy to produce, much like the Ford version. In fact, it's interesting to note that some of the design features that we associate with the Jeep today actually come directly from the Ford model. One example being the 9-slot grille that's infamous with the Jeep brand today. So, Willys took this into consideration, and they produced a new design with their same 60 horsepower engine, but with much more easy to produce features. And this became known as the MB, with M of course standing for military, and B being the second vehicle that they created. With Willys being the official winner of the trials, they were to be the only company contracted to produce Jeeps for the United States military. However, with World War II raging, it quickly became apparent that Willys would not be able to produce Jeeps in the mass quantity that the military needed. So the military decided to contract Ford to produce Jeeps alongside Willys. Total productions for the Jeep come close to 650,000 throughout the entirety of the war, with around 360,000 of those being produced by Willys and about 270,000 being produced by Ford. Now, the Jeep had a massive impact on World War II, with General Eisenhower himself saying that the Jeep was America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. The Jeep continued to serve into the military in various forms through the Vietnam War, and remnants of it can still be seen today in modern military vehicle designs. And that is the story of how the Jeep became one of the most popular and iconic vehicles in American history. Thank you for listening to this presentation.